Good afternoon and welcome to this session where we will be discussing whether AI tools like ChatGPT means we might be seeing the democratization of investment. And we've got a cracking panel with us today. And first we have Max, we've got Max Rofagha, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Finimize, which is a retail investor community with over 1 million subscribers. And he'll be sharing his first-hand insights into the AI trends. And we also have Dr. Heloïse Greeff. She's an investor on eToro, a social trading platform, and over 20,000 individuals have copied her investment strategy so far. She uses her background in machine learning to analyze trends. Now, let's start off with you. You've never worked in investment banking? Tell us, how did you become a social trader? What does it mean to be a popular trader?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out, Aisha. But in short, I was personally looking for a community where I could learn about investing, being very focused on, investing my money and being wise with it. And eToro, as a social trading platform, offered that in a very transparent way. And it gave me the opportunity to learn from others, because essentially it's based on this open setting where all your investing history as well as your current positions are public. And so you could finally sort of discern between what people are saying and where they're actually putting their money. That's one of the things I loved about the platform. And then I just was too lazy to learn technical analysis, so I used machine learning. I was doing my PhD at the time, and it seemed like a sensible tool. This was back in 2013. And it worked. It's been delivering over 20% per year for the last, since 2016, with very minimal risk. And people joined me on that journey, which is great.
No, brilliant. Now, Max, tell us how AI is transforming investment. How's your community reacting to some of the changes that we're seeing?
So I think the spoiler alert is the jury's still out. Obviously, when ChatGPT was announced, there was a huge excitement, and I think we were currently undergoing this whole hype cycle, the Gartner hype cycle. At Finimize, we run a quarterly survey of our millions of retail investors, and in Q1, we asked people, are you going to be using AI tools? How excited are you about them? And then in Q2, we asked them the same question. And you could clearly see that from Q1 to Q2 of this year, the excitement has halved. Wow. And I think that's typical, obviously. At the beginning, you have this huge excitement, hype, and then kind of reality hits in. And I think the jury is still out. And what I mean by that is that not that many tools have actually come to market yet that the retail investor can use. You look at professional, institutional investors like a JP Morgan, they're obviously investing heavily into it. I think they announced that they'd be investing $1 billion per year. But we haven't seen something similar on the retail side. I think we're starting to see more and more tools come to market. And I think my thesis is that once these hit the market, then we'll start to see the excitement go up again as you start to see some of these use cases become reality.
And just tell us a bit more about some of the changes that you've seen year to year. Like, what did you see last year compared to this year?
In terms of the excitement around AI?
Precisely.
Well, I think there's obviously one part of it is how retail investors use it, which is what I just described. I think the other part is investing into AI. We see a lot of interest in obviously stocks like NVIDIA and other companies that are part of the AI ecosystem or supply chain. And yet we see that 33% of our community believes that AI stocks are currently overhyped. And so I think it's obviously on everybody's radar. I mean, I was having lunch outside overhearing people speak. I think the most common word I heard people using was AI. And we're seeing the same thing in our community. It's top of mind. But like I say, I think use cases on paper are there. Use cases in practice still have to be delivered.
It's good to hear that people are discussing AI over lunch at an AI conference. Now, at the heart of this conversation, it's about disruption, right? So how has AI perhaps sped up retail versus institutional trading? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the retail investor, they've massively matured over the last 5 to 10 years. I'm sure as you found, Max, as well. eToro, in their retail investor beat in July, found that 1 in 10 of their investors are using AI as part of their process. And if you then sort of break that down to look at the demographic of the actual people who are using it, very interestingly, it's not the sort of younger end of the scale. It's the 34 to 44-year-olds who are using it. And I think one of the main drivers for that is the fact that a lot of them also disclaimed that they have 3 to 5 years of investing experience already. And so the retail investor overall, with what's happened during the pandemic especially, has matured a lot in what they're expecting from platforms, how they're consuming information, and how they're making decisions based off of that. But as Max has very rightly pointed out, there isn't yet a sort of goose that lays the golden egg for newbies to just click a button or ask a question and it magically appears. But there is certainly tools that kind of align up with different steps within the investing process.
But is it really democratizing investment? Like, when we hear juggernauts like JP Morgan, like as you mentioned, spending the amount that they are on AI, and they are hoovering up AI talent, what does it mean for the little guys? What does it mean for these other fintechs and the disruptors if their incumbents are disrupting the space as well?
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting question actually in this whole debate. I think AI has the power to really level the playing field. Historically, the big debate has always been, does the retail investor even have the opportunity to compete with an institutional investor because they don't have access to the same information, the same depth of information, the same quality of information. And I think the hope is that AI will level those playing fields by giving everybody access to the same amount of data and giving everybody the same processing power to digest that data. I guess the big question is, will that pan out, or will this trend that I alluded to earlier on continue, where you're starting to see the institutionals really take off? JP Morgan talked about it, Citadel talked about it. I mean, all the big players are heavily, heavily investing in this space. And the question will be, are they going to be taking off with such a big leap forward that the retail investors will be lagging behind and that gap will maintain? I think we will have to see. It will be a shame. I think I'm very hopeful if the playing field can be leveled. But right now, unfortunately, it's looking like the institutions once again have the upper hand.
But Heloïse, aren't you one of those people that perhaps is leveling the playing field?
Yeah, so maybe I could just add a little bit of a silver lining to Max's sentiment. And if we talk about using AI for any application, I come from a healthcare background, I've worked in mechanical machines. There's two sort of main use cases. One will be looking at how do we use machines to increase the efficacy of the process. So how do we get a better outcome? And sometimes we're really quite unfair to AI in that sense. We want driverless cars to make no accidents, but we're fine for humans to make accidents when they're driving. So can we give them a benefit of a doubt and say, can we be 0.5% better than the human? From an investor perspective, your efficacy is obviously how well is my portfolio doing? What is my percent profit that I'm making every year? In that scenario, I think Max is very correct in saying that the large institutions having all these resources, access to data, in all logical sense, probably have an advantage over the retail investor. But in the second case, if we're talking about using AI to improve efficiency, so can I do the same thing, get the same output, better, faster, cheaper, and more reliable than without machines? In that case, I think AI has absolutely leveled the playing field for the investor, and my own portfolio is a great example of that. I mean, we measured, so just a sort of ballpark figure, investors are sort of assumed to get 80% of their investments correct. So you sort of assume that 20% of the time you'll be wrong. That's sort of like a good investor, right? You can't be right all the time, but you have to have a sort of aim that you're aiming for. In my portfolio, without affecting the kind of profits that we were making, so without improving the portfolio, we were able to reduce the number of incorrect trades by between 5 and 8%. So that means with the same input, with a very small team, we were able to get the same profits, but with much fewer incorrect guesses, essentially, or incorrect trades. And I think that's really where the power at this point lies for the retail investor, to be able to use AI to make sense of all the information that is out there. Because today, the average retail investor, through wonderful apps like Finimize, have access to more information than a hedge fund manager did 10 years ago. But the question is, are we ready to make a decision based on that? And rather than wanting AI to be this wonderful, glorious thing that spits out the correct answer, I think we should rather think of it as a decision support tool and break down the steps of investing and see at what steps which AI, I hate the term AI because it's such a broad term, what kind of AI, machine learning, deep learning, whatever, do you want to apply to that step in the process?
And in your experience, have you seen this decision making get faster and faster? What have you learned over the last few years? Your modeling?
I think the biggest advantage for the retail investor is being able to remove the emotional part of making that decision. Because I think despite all the tools for any investor, a beginner or an advanced investor, staying sort of committed to that strategy and that hypothesis and that you had set out in the beginning of your portfolio can be really difficult. But tools like AI not only makes it faster, but makes it more reliable, because we are removing that reliance on the human emotion, which, as we all know, is what makes us great creatures, but it also makes us fallible.
This is a bit of a cheeky question, but then is it possible to game investing?
I can answer the question, but just two points maybe to build on what Heloïse just said. I think coming back to this leveling the playing field, I think there's two sort of follow-up thoughts there. I think the first thought is, if history is a lesson, the big disruptor in this space doesn't even exist today. And you can have all these incumbents invest billions and billions into new technology. There's a fairly high likelihood in my mind that the disruptor that will take away market share from these incumbents is being started today. And we'll develop an AI solution that is going to be much more agile, much more built from scratch to really genuinely help fulfill the customer needs. So I think that's going to be an interesting space to observe. I mean, again, right now, Gartner hype cycle, every company has the .ai. The country, I think, random trivia, the country, I think in the Caribbean that owns AI, they're making millions and millions just with domain registrations. So it shows you how much of a hype there is. But there will be companies that will come through, and I think that will be an interesting space to observe. The second piece is, even if the information asymmetry will, to a certain extent, continue over time, there is still an interesting use case whereby perhaps you could imagine a world in which a retail investor gets access to an AI financial advisor. A lot of the value that an advisor brings is not necessarily to beat the market. Very few of them can. But what they do is they're a sparring partner. They're there to avoid you from making mistakes. They're there to perhaps minimize drawdowns, etc. And you could imagine a world where everybody gets that AI advisor in their pocket. Now, whether you can, coming back to your original question, whether you can game in investing, I think in the short term, you will see companies, whether it's startups or incumbents, that will certainly have outsized returns because they will be ahead of the curve when it comes to utilizing new technologies to drive better returns. But we're all aware of how efficient markets become over time. And over time, competitors will catch up. And I think that competitive advantage of just using AI to drive better returns will probably diminish, and that you'll have to find a new thing. I mean, it's common practice. If you look at how hedge funds operate, different strategies during different periods of time work well, then everybody piles into that strategy, then the returns go down, then they need to find a new strategy. I think it will be the same thing here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Would you like to add?
Yeah, I think just to add to that, adaptation will definitely be the core of what's happening in investing space. I don't really like the term to say, can we game it? Because I think for me as an investor, I've had to learn that at the heart of it lies discipline. And yeah, gaming makes that sound a bit like it's not possible. But to what Max was saying in terms of making sense of all of this, surely there will be some winners in the short term, but innovation theory sort of predicts that the first movers don't always have an advantage, and we will surely see some of these startups not generate profits and probably not even generate revenues. So it's really hard for the investor at this point sort of deciding who is a long-term winner in this game. And the sort of closest example that we can look back to is the tech bubble. And if we look at the top 10 tech and telecom companies today, which were also in the top 10 at the height of the bubble in March 2000, there's only two. So that's Microsoft and Cisco. All the other winners back then are, no longer on the top 10 today. So it's really, really hard discerning who are those long-term winners. And there's that one component of how do we use AI to invest, but then as Max also said, how do we invest in AI to benefit from this massive trend that we've seen this year?
Absolutely. Now, we have to talk about hype cycles. If we're having this conversation, we have seen meme stocks, we have seen crypto, we saw GameStop. Now, how as investors do you minimize risk, and also how can you use AI to sort of minimize the potential of risk?
Yeah, again, I think it links back to my last point. It's a very difficult thing to do, to sort of make sure that you don't become a pitfall in one of these companies who go under, but that you can also benefit from this hype. There's massive, massive amounts of money flowing into this whole sector. So this year, the top 5 AI-focused ETFs all ballooned by average 35%. So the retail investor is clearly hungry to take advantage of this, and rightfully so. NVIDIA was one of the only 6 companies to become a $1 trillion company based on the back of producing the chips that generative AI run off of. Are they still a good bet? I don't know. That depends on your strategy. Some might say they're overvalued. So yeah, just making sure that you can inform yourself to make sure that you understand what AI is. And very, very basic advice for investors is always to only invest in things that you understand.
And you were saying you've seen from the survey results that the trend has shifted, and in the last quarter it seems like perhaps investors are aware of the risks and things have cooled in terms of investing in AI. So does that perhaps suggest that people are a bit more cautious?
Well, I think I think people are just seeing that there's been a lot of talk, but not so much walk. And I think it's very normal, like I was saying earlier on. In the beginning, you have a lot of hype, then reality hits in. Then you start to see within reality what are some of the good companies and what are some of the good propositions. And then those will, I think, really drive the narrative. Very much what was said earlier, it's not necessarily a first mover advantage, it's sort of a last mover advantage. So the jury is still out on that one again.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, one thing we sort of have to remember is that in this first mover advantage that some companies have, there will be a lot of failures in that process. So yeah, just making sure that we can sort of wade through that in a sensible manner.
Yeah, great. Now, as an investor, what are the sort of key indicators that you're looking out for when it comes to deciding whether to make an investment or not?
Well, I rely on my models quite heavily, so they either have to sort of point me in the direction of using them, or just making sure that it is something that I understand. I think there's a lot of companies right now who are claiming to use AI, but at the core of it, it's either rule-based or something much more rudimentary. And so it's kind of diving under the bonnet to make sure that we can. But this whole excitement around AI, I think, really came to the man and woman on the street this year when people got to touch and feel it through something like Bard, ChatGPT, and that's what's really sort of fueled this excitement. But I mean, we've been working on AI for a decade now, so it's not really anything new, but it is giving, to draw some of the parallels that you were pointing to with crypto, in the same way cryptocurrency is giving people a flavor of what blockchain can be used for. I think these chatbots are giving users a flavor of what AI can be, but that's not the whole spectrum of it. There's so much more behind it.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think I would echo what she said. And I think that the use cases that we are starting to see in the market is all of these tools being efficiency drivers. I think the first tools that I've come across help with financial analysis and help replace perhaps the need for some more junior analysts in some of these big investment firms. There was recently a company in the US that launched that got backed by Khosla Ventures and a few other fairly well-known VC firms, which essentially makes it really easy to take all the information out there and build a financial model around individual companies, and it no longer becomes a manual process. So I think we're starting to see these tools come to market that essentially become efficiency drivers and give you an enhancement rather than a replacement at this stage, at this point in time.
This might be a bit of a cynical take, but I question whether, of course, we had a downturn in fintech investments. So I'm curious whether some of these firms might be pivoting towards AI. Perhaps they were excited about their sort of rush towards AI, and maybe they thought, oh, hey, we're like actually AI companies. But what are they actually offering? So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are tinkering with it and are playing around with it, and it's a little bit the classic, a solution in search of a problem. Some cool stuff will come out of it. And others will obviously stop using it. I think there's a whole long list of interesting use cases, and I think the really difficult ones are still being worked on because you can't solve them in a matter of a couple of months since these new technologies have become publicly available. So I think most of the excitement is still ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we don't even realize we're using AI in terms of, there's always these sectors that people talk about investing in, and I always cringe when it's like, oh, the technology sector, because I think if you thought like many years ago, would every company, every employee at the company have a computer? You probably wouldn't have imagined that. Now we can't imagine what a company does if they don't have a computer. And so the lines between technology, it's so infiltrated, it's almost become a competitive advantage if you're able to use them. And I think we'll see the same with AI. It'll become maybe in the background where you're not even aware that a company is using it, but it's giving them an advantage in their sector. And sometimes as retail investors, we've come across it and used it without even realizing it. A good example is sentiment analysis. A lot of tools nowadays give like a negative, neutral, positive outlook on the market. Many of them may use natural language processing to sort of sift through news outlets, all kind of text-based company reports, social media, Twitter, all of that. So yeah, sometimes we're even using it without already realizing it.
And what's sort of like the dream scenario or your ambitions and how you could perhaps equip AI in your investment decisions? Like, it may not be something we can do right now, but what would be like the ultimate ambition?
Well, I mean, I've always been a champion for the retail investor, so that's what Finimize was born out of. It was taking this information asymmetry between institutional investors and retail investors and trying to essentially eliminate that information asymmetry. And so it remains my hope, and I continue to be excited about the opportunity that AI will be the final accelerator and enabler of all of us here having the same access to data, same analysis as the professional investors have, and ultimately making markets even more efficient. Because if you think about how the theory of efficient markets, there shouldn't really be any kind of gap between the institutional and the retail investor. There should ultimately, the ultimate efficiency should be that we all have the ability to get the same returns. And so that's my hope.
Yeah, I think like Max, I sit fairly square in the corner of the retail investor. And a sort of ideal scenario would just be to say that every person has the ability to have some sort of support in making an informed decision, and that's really the key part where AI can come to play. It's one of the reasons I started investing myself, because in the same way that we know profits and interest compound over time, so do fees in fund management. And so if that efficiency can be either passed on to the retail investor or enable the retail investor to make that decision on their own, that would be the ideal scenario that I see.
Now I've just got time for one more question. What is your final top tip on using AI in investment strategies? You'd like to start?
Use it sensibly. Use it as a decision support tool. Remember, you as the human have the final say. Use it to take shortcuts, use it to save time, use it to do analysis that you don't have the skills to do, use it to give you an advantage, but use it sensibly.
I would say for me, the way I got into technology in the startup world is I started building my own websites when I was in school. Because when I was in school, the internet started to become a thing. And I just started to play around with everything. And the more you play around with stuff, the more you start to understand it, the more you start to get fascinated by it. I think now, this whole AI wave, there's so many different tools that, I think at the end of the day, play around with everything, try to understand how things work, try to see what's interesting, try to see what gives you interesting results. Take it all with a pinch of salt because, there are still a lot of hallucinations, etc. happening. But I think just getting involved now is, what an incredible time for us to be in this space, to be part of this next generation of technology. So the more you can get involved, I think the better.
Got time for one more question. Do you think we're coming up to a time we could use ChatGPT to help with this decision making?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our company at Finimize, we use ChatGPT the way that we produce our content. Our analysts use it to help enable them to use their time more efficiently. And so we're starting to really sort of gradually see it take more and more mind share and become more ingrained in the daily operations. And so probably next year it'll be heavily ingrained into the way that we produce content.
Yeah, likewise. I think eToro has already integrated ChatGPT in its search function, so that's allowing people to simply make decisions faster instead of turning to a colleague or asking like an analyst or doing an extended search on the internet. There are some basic research tasks that it can really save you a lot of time on already.
Thank you so much, Max and Heloïse. We've covered everything from hype cycles to popular investing to ChatGPT, and that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.